Hi, this is Dr. Janine. I'm so blessed to have you with me. Please excuse me, I am losing my voice just a little bit. I've done this video a few times. I promise I'm going to get through it this time. Last time we talked about God and taking on the characteristics of God and how that's very difficult when we have blockages inside of us that is stopping us from taking on those beautiful characteristics like graciousness and mercifulness and being patient and kind, long-suffering, and there's a list, and we'll go into those later. We also talked about loving God, loving ourselves, and loving our neighbor or others as we love ourselves. Now, it's impossible to love anyone unless we love ourselves first. If there's absolutely no love for ourselves whatsoever, we can't love anyone. Or if there's a blockage inside of us, we might be able to give from a part of us, but we won't be able to give out of that blockage, or that blockage might be something that's keeping us from being blessed to give, and that also keeps us from being blessed to receive. Because we live in a universe of giving and receiving, of sowing and reaping, whatever we put out there, we also receive. So if we're unable to completely give ourselves over to other people and be completely ourselves, it stops us from receiving blessing as well. So let's take a deeper look, pardon the pun here, as to what soul scars are, because they are deep scars that are within us, and they're usually caused by emotional trauma. Let me start by giving you an example from the human body. Say, for instance, you cut your hand really deep, and all of a sudden, our bodies being as amazing as they are, everything starts to go and move towards that wound, and eventually the blood starts to clot in that area and then form a scar. That's part of the healing process for our body. And the thickness and the depth of that scar normally is dependent upon the extensiveness of the wound. Well, the soul scar kind of works the same way, and they're formed normally in early childhood, or at least early development time. And that can be from babyhood to age 7, when most of our personality is formed, or from age 7 also to 14, and then into our early 20s. We can experience a great deal of trauma. Let me just kind of explain one example of a trauma. It can be an abuse of some sort, like a sexual abuse or a sexual assault, something like that, where someone might threaten and say, if you tell someone, this is going to happen or that's going to happen, which creates a great deal or depth of fear inside of a person. Or it can cause a person to shut down. And a lot of the reactions due to that type of a wound is, we deal with it, or tend to deal with it, in the ways that have been displayed around us as well. So if we have people who nurtured us who also hurt us as well, and it's like, I love you, but I'm going to do this to you, because of soul scars that they might have. And they could be scars that come passed down through generations. But something like that happens, there's a great breach of trust. And we tend to hide, and we hide from shame and disappointment. We start to blame ourselves. Let's take it back to the time of Adam and Eve, when Eve ate the apple, and of course Adam joined her in that. And as the story goes, they covered themselves up with leaves, and basically, I think what the Bible says is fig leaves. I would use any leaf, I guess, but that's the example that's in the Bible. But they covered themselves, that's the point. And the reason they did that is because they discovered they were naked, and there was a great deal of shame out of that discovery. So God comes walking along, wanting to give and create relationship, have relationship with his beautiful creation, because that's what we're here for, to please God, to have relationship, and to have the best experience here on earth. We are here to give God the best experience in human body that we possibly can. And I believe that, to worship and to love one another and to learn how to become one. But in the scene in the Garden of Eden, God is looking for Adam and Eve, and they're covered with these leaves because they know that something has been done that they did wrong, and they feel deeply ashamed. And so God asked them, why are you covering yourself? And they explained it. So, as it goes, they went through a series of discipline, but God eventually came along and covered them himself. And how he did that is through animal skins and so forth. But we do this as people as well. We take on this sense of shame, even when there's a situation where we really didn't have a choice. There was an abuse that happened toward us, and we take on the responsibility for that abuse. Maybe we're afraid or we're ashamed and we can't tell anyone, or we can't tell anyone because we're afraid. So we tend to cover it up. People being as we are, we cover up a lot of things. We're just kind of like that. We go out there, especially on social media, we just tend to put on a smile and pretend that life is always great. But life isn't always like that. In fact, life is pretty darn messy most of the time, and for most people. So keep that in mind if you're going through something that's very deep. Everyone goes through something at some point in their life. So in the instance of the soul scar, it's a very deep wound inside. And what happens is it begins to form a scar because it's a wound, because we're actually covering it and we're protecting that wound. And wounds of those types, like the emotional kind, they're not meant to be protected. They're meant to be exposed, because when we walk in the truth sets us free. But of course, we tend to bind ourselves up by this spirit of shame. And in the Garden of Eden, that was Satan that came on in and gave us that little gift. And it was not so much of a gift, is it? But I guess in one way, if you're experiencing a lot of torment and difficulty, it can be a trigger to go out and seek out emotional healing and actually seek God. In fact, most of the time when we seek God, it's because we're going through a great deal of pain or difficulty. And it could be trauma. But the soul scar is almost like a dam when it comes to the Spirit of God and the light that comes from the Christed One. And so here's God trying to give to his people. And it comes against this rock, which is the scar that's formed inside of us. And it can't flow through because we've got this hard rock that's keeping it from going all the way through and out. That stops the blessing to people that are around us, but also stops the blessing from coming back to us, because what we reap, we also sow. What we give out in this universe is what we also receive back. It is the law of attraction, basically, and the law of sowing and reaping, or reaping and sowing. So we need to deal with this scar. How are we going to do this? Well, I said it kind of briefly just earlier. It's talking about the truth. It's bringing out the truth. If we don't walk in the truth, we walk in a lie. And if we walk in a lie during the course of our life, of course, we've got this thing inside that's always festering, and they always tend to expand and get bigger. What you don't deal with tends to get bigger. So people come along and a certain situation brews, maybe you're having an argument, and things come out of you that you didn't even know existed. And you're like, where did that come from? Normally, it is a subconscious or unconscious response to what's going on in here. A lot of us block things off so much we don't even remember why the wound is there or how it got there until we begin to unpeel. And how we can do that is go into the presence of God, because God is the Spirit of truth. And when God shines light upon anything that's darkness, of course, any light, when it comes to the face of darkness, darkness cannot survive when it's encountering light. So God is pure light. And when God shines light, he brings light upon the truth and can illuminate that through revelation to you when you go into the presence of God and ask for that revelation. And normally for me, I'm crying. It's like I have to get to a point where things are coming at me and coming at me and coming at me. And normally that is a trigger to understand, or at least it's something that should make you understand there's something that needs to be healed, because we attract our experiences from what's inside of us. And if we're attracting negativity, it's our wounds that's attracting all of these experiences. And a lot of people just explain it off as being bad luck, or that's just how my life is. Well, it isn't how your life is. It's how your insides are. And so we go into the presence of God, to the Spirit of truth, and just ask for God to reveal what exactly it is that's going on inside, all the way to the fullness. And this might mean a lot of prayer, meditation. For me, it's journaling, talking to other people. A lot of things can come out in those ways, but we need to be able to be vulnerable with God, to be honest with God, to be vulnerable sometimes with others, and to be honest with others that are around us. And more than anything else, besides being honest with God, being honest with ourselves. And then we can actually deal with the truth. And I just want to give you this scripture, John chapter 8:32. Then you will know the truth, and the truth shall set you free. It's something that I've tried to live by most of my life. Sometimes I even cover things up. We all do. And we tend to go out in the world with a facade. We don't like other people to see what we're going through, which is kind of ridiculous, because Jesus prayed the high priestly prayer in the Bible. It's all written down. It's so beautiful. He prayed to the Father, let them be one, even as you and I are one. Let's not deny Jesus his answer to his prayer. Come together as one and reveal ourselves to each other, and let one another help each other to heal. Now, I know you can't trust just everyone right now, because there's a lot of conflict in this world. And what it basically is a lot of soul scars coming against each other. And many of the racial issues that we're having, the tensions, the political tensions, a lot of the prejudice issues, they come from generational soul scars that just are not healed. And it takes the Spirit and the illumination of God and the light of the great, wonderful, beautiful Christed One to come in and to be allowed to shine in, to expose what the darkness is, so we can go ahead and heal that. That's the idea, either personally or globally or nationally. Our nation is going through a major soul scar release right now, because all of these things are being revealed through difficulty and strain, and a lot of people are bickering with each other. It's just kind of it's a symptom of a disease that we've taken on in our nation for a long, long time. And it needs to be exposed in order to be healed, so that we can heal our land. And what does God say? If we would just humble ourselves and pray. And that means we do that personally as well. Humble ourselves and pray. Jeremiah, the book, read the whole book of Jeremiah. It's just beautiful. But 29:11, humble ourselves and pray. God will hear us. He will hear our heartbeat. He will hear from heaven. And I believe heaven is all around us. And he will heal our land. Our land, not just our nation, but our land on the inside, the personal, private land that's in here. So when we're in relationship with someone and we're going like this with them, and we're starting to feel like they're poking us, it's that wound inside, and we need to get real with it and be honest and get real with the people that are closest to us and say, look, I think I'm feeling this way because I've got a wound. Can we come together and figure this out? Usually it's two people with wounds butting heads. That's my experience. I don't know about anybody else, but we definitely are doing that in this country right now. So many differences of opinion, so many ideas. But in order to release that dam, we need to let the light of Christ shine into our light and into our life and into our heart and into our being. And that comes by invitation. God steps back. He doesn't impose himself on anyone. He gave us freedom of choice, which means we can choose to let it fester or be there and just be sick and get worse and let it grow and let it expand and let it just vomit out on everybody and just, we can cause friction and family dysfunction. If we want to do that, we certainly can choose to do that. Or we can ask God in and just invite him into the whole thing. Once it's illuminated, once you see the truth, come on in, open the door, because, just ask him and he will come in and he will heal, because he's a healing God. Jesus displayed this throughout his entire area while he was here on earth. That's all what he did, is he healed. He took bad spirits out of people. He raised the dead. And that's the kind of people we want to be. We want to raise the dead, meaning the dead who are in here. When we're dead in here, we're not living our best life. We're not living a good life. When we've been abused and traumatized, we tend to cover ourselves and we want to hide because of the shame. And sometimes we take on some of the dysfunction of the people, like I began to say earlier, that we grew up around. So maybe it will be overeating and we take on all of this weight and we're carrying the weight of the world from the inside out. And it also comes as a shield. So we're sure no one is going to come against us again. No one's going to come near me now. I'm going to hide. And sometimes we just want to cover and cover into just so much. It's like we want to put blankets of stuff on top of it so we don't have to deal with them, because the pain just becomes so bad and almost intolerable. And it's not until we come to a point of humility that we really begin to heal, because that's when everything starts to spill out, isn't it? And when we're at that point of humility with God, it means that we are in the best place ever. I think the most healing that's ever happened in my life was when I was on my face in tears with lots of sobbing. And it's usually because I can't take it anymore. I need to let it out. And that's how we release depression, oppression, suppression, all of those things that we tend to harbor inside, and everything starts to harden and makes us actually soul sick and mentally sick. So if we want to avoid that, go to God first. Go to God whenever you can. Go to God now, because we all carry something. Ask him. See if there's any wicked way. Examine my heart, like King David asked of God. And see if there's any wicked way, because out of the heart the mouth speaks. And we don't want to speak verbal vomit, upon everyone, meaning anger and just, awful stuff upon people, and just harm other people, because hurting people harm other people. So let's heal it all now. Let's be in the light of Christ now. We are Christed beings because of the act on the cross that Jesus displayed that day when he hung on the cross. He actually poured himself out, and he showed us the greatest example of love ever. How could we ever deny that laying down of his life wasn't the greatest expression of love ever? When you lay your life down for someone, you give your life over to somebody and you allow them to be vulnerable with you and you with them. And it's a beautiful healing experience. bring in God, and we have a threefold cord that's not easily broken. So speak God's promises during those moments. Ask God to reveal. Give those revelations to me, God. I want to know why I act this way. I want to know why I'm harboring this thing for so long, and I won't let anyone know about it, and I won't let anyone in. You have to open up a wound in order for it to be spilled out so that it can be completely healed and the scar can be flattened out and then eventually washed away by the water of the Word. And Jesus is the living Word. I hope this makes a lot of sense to you. Excuse my voice once again. It is just like really gone. I think it's time for me to just go have some warm tea, go into the presence of God myself, and just ask for healing, because it's such a sweet place to be. It's a sweet place to be with others too, and I miss all of you. I miss pastoring. I miss being in the presence of God with God's people. I miss being in the presence of the Anointed One with all of us. I miss being in that oneness. That's just the most wonderful feeling in the whole world. And if we want to be in that position in spirit and in truth, then we have to be truthful and honest. And it starts with God and with ourselves. I love you from here. I hope that you have a wonderful rest of the day. If you need anything at all, my number is 832-484-8306. And have a blessed and beautiful healing rest of the day. Bye-bye.